Are you mute?
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddham dhammang sangham namasami. Dear friends, today is going to be a change of pace from our usual programs. Usually we read from the Pali Canon with occasionally referring to the parallel texts in the other canonical texts apart from the Pali Canon. Today, my intention is to read to you some passages from the Arahat Sanghamittā story from the extended Mahāvaṁsa. The Mahāvaṁsa is perhaps the first or one of the first histories that we know of. It was begun in Sri Lanka during the ancient period. I'm not sure the exact dates, possibly around the Asoka period of 350 or so BCE. And this massive text was then added to through the successive cycles of the history of Sri Lanka, all the way up to, as I understand it, the invasion of the Portuguese in the 14th century of the Common Era. The Mahāvaṁsa, as a history, has a kind of a different character than the suttas do. It needs a little bit more work from us to take on board the spiritual significance of what's given here. The suttas do tell many historical things about the life of the Buddha, about the other contemporaries of the Buddha, the kings and the countries that existed at that time, as well as being rich in anecdotes that describe what the life of the different classes of people was like during the time of the Buddha's life. But we see that almost invariably in the suttas, the Buddha never stopped teaching. He always would draw out the moral significance of the events, or the significance for practice, the significant guidance or indication about how one should cultivate in order to realize the fruits of his teaching. So it's almost as if the history is given as a set of metaphors for the purpose of teaching something about the Dhamma. In the passages that I'm going to read you today, it's the moral of the story is not drawn out and spelled out in the same way. So I think I may share the screen with you so that you can see the source that I'm using here. This is the Arahat Sanghamittā's story from the extended Mahāvaṁsa, translated by Ananda Jyoti Bhikkhu. Here's the beautiful illustration that he used in this book, which is showing the arrival of Saṅghamittā with the Bodhi tree. This is showing here the king of Sri Lanka receiving the Bodhi tree from Saṅghamittā. I'm going to give you a link in the comments in just a minute so that you will have that for your future reference. Links. Copy the link. Okay. Okay, this is the link for the book of Saṅghamittā's story. I think I may simply read you the story. I think it could be a little bit more relaxing that way. And I'm slightly jumping around because I'm also trying to show you some illustrations or so as we go along. We're starting with the birth of Saṅghamittā. Formerly, in the Mauryan lineage, a son called Bindusara was born to the previous king called Chandragupta in the city of Pataliputta. And after the death of his father, while still growing, he became the king. Bindusara is going to be Saṅghamitta's grandfather. Chandragupta is a very famous person. He's the founder of the Mauryan Empire. His reign was from 320 BCE to 298. So he ascended to his power approximately 180 years after the parinibbana of the Buddha. This is one of the very important themes of this history is how the world adjusted to the parinibbana of the Buddha having had this glorious half century while the Buddha was alive and walking in northern India with his tremendous charisma, his fantastic skill as a teacher, being able to cast his eye over the world and see persons who were ripe for awakening or for making progress in the path, and then being able to know in a very responsive way that teaching that would be suitable for those individuals, to awaken the Dhamma in those individuals. Afterwards, we don't have the Buddha anymore. We don't have the living Gautama with us anymore. And the role of the story we're going to tell is very much involved with how Buddhism was able to be alive and to thrive in the following centuries. To that king there, this would be King Bindusara, the son of Chandragupta. There were two sons of the same mother. And to those two sons, there were 99 other sons of the king who were brothers by different mothers. The eldest of the sons of all was the Prince Asoka. To the eldest of them all, the Prince Asoka, the Lord of the earth, that's his father, gave the vice sovereignty over the country of Avanti. Then one day, the king came to the attendance hall, and seeing his son, he sent him off, saying, "Go to the country and dwell in the city of Ujjaini." In accordance with his father's bidding, he went to Ujjaini by the interior road, and there, in the city of Vedisa, he arranged to make his dwelling in the house of the merchant called Deva. Seeing the merchant's daughter, he reflected gladly and said this: "I have heard she is endowed with auspicious marks, wealth, affection, and is amiable. If they will receive these gifts, I will win her favor." So then this woman, Vedisa, is a Buddhist. And Asoka's marriage to Vedisa was a love match that was part of his spiritual transformation. I guess I could show you here is the place where Asoka's mother lived and where she stayed, where Saṅghamittā was born and first brought up in the center of India. And the capital of India is called Pataliputta, which is someplace up here in the northwest of India, near the border with Nepal. So Vedasa's family received what was given. He became intimate with her. After life arose in the womb, she was led to the city of Ujjaini, and there she gave birth to the prince's handsome son, called Mahinda, and also had a daughter called Saṅghamittā. When Bindusara was lying on his deathbed, he remembered his son and sent ministers to fetch him from the city of Ujjaini. Asoka then went. The messengers went to Asoka with the news and announced his bidding, and he went quickly into their presence. He placed his children and wife there on the interior road of the city of Vedisa and went into his father's presence. When his father died in the city of Pataliputta, he did the proper duties to the body for 7 days. Then he had his 99 brothers by different mothers all murdered, and raised the royal canopy over himself, and was consecrated right there in the city. We can see here this hair-raising story of how the story of Asoka is born in bloodshed, war, and conflict. And of course, the problem of succession in the era of history where the kings are or the emperors are ruling by their special power, then there always will be the potential for some kind of a catastrophe or a crisis when it comes to the succession. And of course we see this not only in the history of India, but we also see it in European history or any part of the world where you have kings, that you have a violent conflict at the time of succession, where the following generation has the struggle to determine which child is going to come out on top. After Asoka was consecrated there in the city, after the 2 children were sent out of the presence of the king, the Venerable Mother herself resided right there in the city of Vedisa. So she was protected from all this violence, living far away. So this is the first fragment that I have. I'll read one more fragment and then we may pause to see if there's questions. This one is about the going forth of Saṅghamitta's uncle, Prince Tissa. So I think you heard at the top that Bindusara had 2 sons by one mother. The older son was Asoka. The younger son was called Tissa. Tissa is to become a bhikkhu. One day, Prince Tissa went hunting and saw a deer sporting in the wilderness. And having seen that, he thought thus: even the deer who live on grass enjoy themselves in the wilderness. Will not the monks who live on pleasant food also enjoy themselves? He went Okay, here is Prince Tissa, and he's hunting for this deer. He went to his house and informed the king about his thought. To teach him Asoka gave him sovereignty for 7 days, saying, "You can experience sovereignty for 7 days, young man, and after that I will kill you." Now, he's already killed 99 of his brothers, so this was a credible threat. With the passing of 7 days, he asked, "Why are you so wasted away?" "Through fear of death," he said. And the king spoke again, saying, "Thinking that after 7 days you will die, you did not enjoy them. How will the strivers," that's the bhikkhus, "how will the strivers enjoy themselves, dear, when they always contemplate death?" Spoken to thus by his brother, he gained faith in the dispensation, and in time, having gone hunting again, he saw the restrained elder Mahāvaṁsa, the great Dhamma protector, pollutant-free, that's free from the asavas, that means he's an arahant, being fanned with a sal branch by a naga. And the one with wisdom reflected, "When will I go forth in the victor's dispensation and live in the wilderness like this elder?" The elder, in order to instill faith, rose into the sky, went to Asoka's monastery, and stood on the water of the pool. Then he hung the robes he wore in the sky and descended into the pond and bathed his limbs. The prince, seeing this psychic power, gained great faith and saying, "Today itself I will go forth." The wise one made a wise decision. He approached and respectfully asked permission from him, the king, for his going forth. And being unable to prevent him, the Lord of the world, surrounded by his great retinue, took him to his own monastery. And he went forth in the presence of the elder Mahādhammarakkhita. Asoka's own monastery is the monastery for which Asoka was the patron. With him, roughly 4,000 other men also received the going forth, but the exact number is not known. The Lord of Men's nephew was called Agi Brahma. This is the son of Tissa, well known as the husband of the king's daughter Saṅghamittā. So, Agi Brahma, her cousin, had been married to Saṅghamittā. And their son, that's Mahinda, who was and the son of Saṅghamittā and Agi Brahma was called Sumana. After asking permission from the king, Sumana and Agi Brahma also went forth. The prince is going forth in King Asoka's 4th year, and increased the benefit of the multitude. Right there, he received the higher ordination, and having the supporting conditions while striving, the prince became a worthy one with 6 psychic powers. I think I want to pause here and see if anybody has a question or an answer or a reflection about what the significance of this ancient account is for our own understanding and practice.
I have one question.
Okay.
Just that the name of the younger brother was Tissa, and I was wondering what that means in Pali, because was remembering that Venerable Sariputta's former name was Upatissa, right?
Yeah. Tissa is a common name in Pali. Somebody could look in the library and look up the name Tissa in the Dictionary of Pali Proper Names. I'm going to just put a pin on that and come to Damon.
Thank you. So at this point, has she already kind of represented a pioneering kind of, has bucked the trend of males being the only monks or monastics, and now she's kind of, like cutting edge feminist for her time?
I would say that at that point, the Bhikkhuni Sangha was already numerous. She was a leader in goodness, and it was very much, I think, the heritage of her mother that made her that way, and she seemed to be, excuse me, because of being outside of Pataliputta, she was outside of the maelstrom of politics of the day, living a very pure, I would say, a religious life, even before she became a bhikkhuni. But I wouldn't say that quite yet that she's become an icon of the power of women. I think it's going to come up pretty soon that we'll start to see this. The next fragment that is touching these fragments that we're reading, there's a larger history, and Saṅghamittā is one of the characters in this very large history with many characters and personalities. So the compiler, the modern monk Ananda Jyoti, has very kindly extracted and translated from the Pali those sections which tell us something about Saṅghamitta's story. The next section is about 84,000 monasteries. All those delightful monasteries he had undertaken to build in all the cities. This would be referring to the new Emperor Asoka. They were completed within 3 years, and through the superintendent elder Indaguta's psychic power, the one called Asoka Rama was also completed in various places that had been visited by the victorious one. The Lord of the earth made delightful shrines. So this is a picture representing a Thai artist's concept of the Asoka Rama, of one of the monuments that was built by Asoka. We know that when Europeans first went to India, especially the English, they thought that the Buddha was a mythological character. And some of the earliest anthropologists who were exploring the ancient monuments of India were astonished to discover the historical record of what's called Asoka's pillars that he had erected in cities all throughout his kingdom. Asoka had these pillars erected and had them engraved with Buddhist sayings, some of which are matching to the texts that we find in our Pali Canon. And so, because they are rocks and therefore credible to the Western mind as being real, whereas the heritage of the verbal culture that had been passed down was not given the same kind of credibility. Therefore, they began to understand the idea that Gautama Buddha, or Buddha, was a historical figure who was known and lived during a certain time. And so this is how it was described in the ancient text. You know, my opinion, I don't criticize the authenticity of things that are carved into rocks, but I do feel that things that are written down on paper are not necessarily more authentic or reliable compared with things that are passed down through the oral tradition. Because in the oral tradition, you would have a group of the Bhanakas who were dedicated to memorizing a certain portion of a text, and the one person who was memorizing it would stand up and recite in front of 100 colleagues who had already learned it. And if he made a mistake or had a memory slip in the recitation, he had 100 spell checkers to correct the error and to keep consistency. And they had, because they were so concerned about and fearful of losing the teachings of the Buddha after his parinibbana, then keeping the accurate memory of the teachings became a very essential kind of a project. But to the Western mind, the oral tradition and the tradition that was subsequently written down on the ola leaves, which were not necessarily that long-lived. There is some things written on parchment that can be dated to the 1st century of the Common Era, but not going all the way back to the time of the Buddha. Okay, so anyway, these shrines were made in all the places that had been visited by the victorious one. From the 84,000 cities on all sides, letters were brought on the same day saying, the monasteries are finished. The viharas are finished. That means a living place for the monastics. Having heard the letters that would have been read out to him, the great king of great power, success, and heroism desired to hold great festivals himself at all the monasteries. In the cities, the drum was beaten, and it was announced, a week from this day, all the monasteries must hold a festival at the same time in all directions, on the whole earth, league by league. Give a great donation and make decorations along the pathways, and in the village monasteries, in all the monasteries, every day, prepare a great donation for the community of monks, according to the right time and according to ability, with ornamentation of garlands, of flowers, of strings, of lights, here and there, with all musical instruments and manifold presents, having taken upon themselves the Uposatha observances, that's the lunar observance day. Let everyone listen to the Dhamma and make innumerable offerings and merit on that day. And everyone everywhere, in every way, in accordance with that order, prepared offerings, delighting the heavens. And so if we go to any Buddhist country, we can see this very same custom when I was in Sri Lanka, the place I trained was in the rural countryside of Sri Lanka, not in Colombo. And the majority of the supporters were poor. Once in a while, you would have a family that would come in a nice car, but many times the families would come by foot, or they would come like in a small tractor pulling a small cart. And the families would come on the observance day and spend the entire day observing the Uposatha precepts, the 8 precepts, like what some of us took this morning, and listening to Dhamma talks, which in modern times they had a 24-hour Dhamma marathon on the radio, so they could just sit and listen to them on the radio, or they could listen to a living teacher, and then they would bring, according to their ability, they would bring especially the meal dana to give to the monastics. But the offering of practice, the offering listening to the Dhamma, is a kind of a puja. Bowing down and chanting and reciting words of praise for the Triple Gem is a kind of puja. Offering the incense and the candles and the bits of food is a kind of puja. When I was in Sri Lanka, every morning the children would pick fresh blossoms, jasmine blossoms, and put them on a plate, and give the fragrant flowers to the Buddha. And then they would give a toothpaste and a toothbrush to the Buddha. And they would, at the afternoon time, they would give a meal to the Buddha. And then in the evening, they would give some water or clear juice, and they would give betel. You know, betel is what people chew, and they chew it and spit. That's why the Buddha needs to brush his teeth in the morning, because he's been chewing betel in the evening. And so it would, in a way, make me, when I first encountered Buddhism, I wasn't anywhere close to children. They were all adults. And the first temple that I practiced at did not give a lot of emphasis on offering puja. They just basically did it when visitors came, but they didn't necessarily. Do they offer puja every day now? Yeah. So they became more devoted to the offering of the candles, the incense, the flowers, and the puja. So it had a certain kind of a nice meaning. But then when I saw the small children having their daily chore, offering puja, and realizing how, children are, the way that they're learning about how to be an adult, and they're playing with their dolls, or they're playing with cooking, or they're playing with driving the car, or playing with their little soldiers. So they're rehearsing with their toys the pattern that they're going to be following for their whole lifetime, and that's how it becomes like the movements of the body becomes locked in. And so then this declaration of King Asoka, really endorsing. Now, this practice on the Uposatha Day is given in the earliest level of the Pali text, so that we know that custom goes all the way back to the time of the Buddha. But the emperor then made it into a very big, glorious national festival. So everyone practiced that way, delighting the heavens. On that day, the great king, decked out with all adornments, together with his harem and ministers, and surrounded by his army, went to his own monastery, as though splitting the whole earth. This is indicating his power. We're not sure exactly what that simile means. After worshipping the Supreme Sangha, he stood in the midst of the Sangha. In that assembly, there were 800 million monks, and of them, 100,000 were strivers who had destroyed the pollutants, destroyed the asavas, that is to say, they were arahants. There were also 90,000 nuns in that place, and at that time, 1,000 nuns had destroyed the pollutants. This is kind of a typical pattern that you see, that women have the same attainments as men, but in smaller numbers, which is sort of a representation of sort of a hierarchical idea. Those who had destroyed the pollutants performed the miracle called opening the world. This is described in the commentary as making so that all the beings in the universe are visible to each other, from the highest heaven to the lowest hell, for the purpose of instilling confidence in King Dhammasoka. Previously, because of his wicked deeds, he was known as Violent Asoka, and later, because of his meritorious deeds, he was known as Righteous Asoka. So this case, the Dhamma has not just the meaning of truth, but it also has the meaning of righteous. Asoka looked at the Rose Apple Island. This is Sri Lanka, which is surrounded on all sides by the ocean, and all the monasteries decorated with many offerings. And having seen that, he was very satisfied, and after sitting down, he asked the Sangha, "Was anyone, Venerable Sirs, so generous in the dispensation of the greatly happy one?" The elder Moggalaputta answered the king's question. "Even while the happy one was living, there has been no generosity like yours." Hearing that statement, the king was very satisfied and asked him, "Is there anyone who inherits the awakened one's dispensation who is like unto me?" The elder saw the supporting condition of the king's son, Mahinda, and similarly of the king's daughter, Saṅghamittā, and being responsible for the dispensation, that's the sasana, which means the entire community of Buddhism passing through history. In modern times, it's referred to as the Buddhist religion, so it's the living tradition, including the Dhamma, carried through by all of the disciples. Seeing the conditions for its growth, he answered the king, "Even such a one who is greatly generous, not known as an heir in the dispensation. Whoever, great king, having amassed a heap of wealth from the plains of the earth up to the tip of the Brahma worlds, would give it all as a great donation to the community of monks, is still only known as a supporter of material requisites, O ruler of men. But he who lets his son or daughter go forth in the dispensation is a true supporter of the dispensation, as well as our material supporter." Then the Lord of the world, wishing to be a supporter of the dispensation, asked Mahinda and Saṅghamittā as they were standing there, "Will you go forth, dears? Going forth is known as a great thing." Hearing their father's statement, they said this to their father, "Today we will go forth, if the God King wishes. There will be gain for us and for you in the going forth." Since the time of Prince Tisa's going forth, the young man Mahinda had naturally desired to go forth, and Saṅghamittā had made the resolve after her husband Agibrahma's going forth. Although the Lord of the earth desired to give the vice sovereignty to Mahinda, even more than that, he was pleased with his going forth. His dear son Mahinda, who was wise, handsome, very strong, he let go forth with the festivities, and also his daughter, Saṅghamittā. Then Mahinda, the king's joy, was 20 years old, and the king's daughter, Saṅghamittā, had reached 18. On the same day, he had the going forth in higher ordination. On the same day, he had the going forth and the placing in training. She had the going forth and the placing in training. So Saṅghamittā had a form of training called Sikkhamana, which is a higher level than a novice, but not yet a bhikkhuni. So one who has been previously married would take this form of training initially. The prince's preceptor was called Mogali. Elder Mahadeva let him go forth, but Majantika made a formal announcement. Saṅghamitta's preceptor was the well-known nun Dhammapala. Her teacher, the nun Ayupala. And in time, she also became pollutant-free, that is, fully enlightened. They both were lights in the dispensation and helpers on the island of Lanka. They went forth 6 years after King Dhammasoka came to the throne. The great Mahinda, who brought faith to the island in his 3rd year, learned the Tipitaka, the 3 baskets of the Pali Canon, in the presence of his preceptor. The nun, a crescent moon, the monk Mahinda, the sun. Younger sister and brother, these two were lights of the Awakened One's dispensation. So we can pause here for a moment, and it's the next stage is 13 years later, with their arrival in Sri Lanka. So there was a question that was asked last time about what was the Deshana, or what was the suttas that the Venerable Saṅghamittā taught. And as I was preparing for today, I was looking out for that, and I did not find a specific reference to which suttas were taught by Saṅghamittā. There is a reference to several suttas that were taught by Mahinda, which initially caused the aristocratic families of Sri Lanka to be converted to Buddhism and to desire the going forth. Although that specific content about making that connection is not present, what can we see in this story? There is one theme. It's something that I spoke about last Tuesday, about the relationship between devotion and practice. That when at the time of the Buddha's Mahaparinibbana, and the flowers of the sal tree dropped from the tree out of season, and the flowers of the fire tree dropped down from heaven, all this in reverence for the Buddha, and the sandalwood dropped down from the heavens, scattering over the Buddha's body near his last moments. The heavenly choirs sang in reverence to the Buddha. And then even at that moment, in the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, the Buddha took this powerful, compressed, miraculous moment of his approaching final release from samsara, release without any residue left. And he took the occasion to give a Dhamma lesson to his disciple Ananda. And said, Ananda, if you really want to venerate me, practice the Dhamma in accord with the Dhamma. Practice the Dhamma as I have taught you. So we can see that this commemoration and the abundance and the richness and the beauty and the luxurious abundance of giving are all designed to create a profound emotion, kind of an awesome emotion, but nevertheless the purpose is for the sake of practice. And the fact that these venerables, in a short time after their ordination, were becoming free from the asavas, becoming fully enlightened arhats, shows the strength of their practice. So the one thing that I take from this is the kind of like the unification of practice and respect or veneration. Damon, you have a question?
If you could say something, the Buddha, as you said, his story was, how could you venerate me? Well, just go out and practice the Dhamma. Is this in such contrast to, like, in Christianity, Jesus' last directives were, go make believers of all people of the earth. So, we're talking about, I'm very conditioned by the principle of separation of church and state here in the West. And now we're talking about a woman, I think, I can't help but bring it up, but she's a historical figure. So I think it's fair game. She was said to be propagating Buddhism or proselytizing Buddhism. And then you sort of have the mixture of it becoming a political state religion in what was then, Sri Lanka. I'm confused.
Yes, indeed. She was a missionary. Now, there is another sutta where the Buddha did advise the bhikkhus to go in every direction and to teach and point out and explain the Dhamma. So the Buddha did give his sanction to missionaries. And then it's also particularly true that Asoka has a political story. There is some bit of a debate about whether he was really a Buddhist or whether he was more like a neutral than that, because he had the policy of supporting the Jains and supporting other religious practices. And it also happened in later centuries that the inheritors of the Brahmin religion came to be more and more associated with the royal court as being the official monks of the state. And so the Brahmin priests were living in the court, and they were being asked to give advice about matters of government policy. They were asked to give blessings. They were asked to give advice like, which day of the week the astrology would be favorable for undertaking certain activities. And in that way, there came to be kind of like an interaction between Buddhism and Brahmanism, where some ideas, some Brahmanical ideas, sort of like filtered down and filtered into Buddhism, but Buddhism became more like, I guess you could say, countercultural or something like that, and not so much a state religion. But during the time of Asoka, Asoka was tolerant and supportive of all religions, but he had a special personal relationship to Buddhism, and you can see that in ancient times there was not the separation of church and state. Like in English history, King Henry VIII broke away from the Catholic Church, and you could just blame it on his sex drive, but actually Henry was very interested in theology, and he was very interested in religious reform and religious practices and how the churches should be directed and how that people should pray, and King James sponsored the creation of the King James Bible in English, and so state religion has been a thing for a long time, and we could say that the support of Asoka was a factor in Buddhism being able to become widely disseminated. It became a kind of a soft power. So rather than sending an army to conquer a country, he sent missionaries to convert the country. And then from there evolved diplomatic relationships and sort of a voluntary spread of his imperial system. Richard, do you have a comment?
Yes, thank you. There was a tradition in most of the Indian type cultural countries where people would get together for philosophical debate, and the one who won the debate, the others would automatically transition to their religion because they realized that their own ideas were wrong. So this was quite a common thing, and Mahāyāna Buddhism criticizes what's today known as Theravadan Buddhism, or the original Buddhism, that they only are interested in their own enlightenment, therefore it's a small vehicle. But Buddha, when he had his first 60 arahants, he sent them out. He said, "Let no two take the same path, and go and spread this, teaching." But it's not the way the Western Abrahamic, not including the Jewish religion, but Christian and Muslim teachers go out, that they try to force others, to become members of their religion. It's more along this idea of this philosophical debate. And when others in these other areas converted and they were the intelligentsia, then, and many times the kings went for entertainment. They had no TV, radio, or anything. So a lot of times they'd go to listen to these various, religious leaders speak. And so through that, then they would, get converted, etc. But it's not like a forced conversion or anything like that. There was a high tolerance in these societies that a person's, religious ideas and philosophical ideas were kind of were like their own. There wasn't a lot of societal force until much later in history, when they started battling against the Abrahamic religions, especially the Muslims coming in and invading and things like that, and forcing people and killing all the Buddhist monks and in the universities and monasteries and things like that. Anyways, that's the only point I want to make. It's a bit different from Western type of, go out and convert everybody.
Thank you. That's a really good point. And we can see how at the time of the Buddha and at the time of Ashoka, that there was this constant dialogue among the different faiths, and that part of that debate process would be like, say, there's some idea, like, the Jains or the Brahmins have some idea about what is the meaning of rebirth, and then the Buddha would critique that concept and say, well, partly you got it, but you don't quite have it. You don't really have it the right way, and the way that you're holding on to this concept is not leading you to liberation. But if you would take sort of a similar set of ideas, but look at it in a different kind of a way, then you can see how this reality is like the reality of rebirth could be something that many people can have a glimpse of, or through intuition or through direct knowledge. They could have some kind of see that there is rebirth, but they don't know what to make of it or how to understand it or how to hold it or how to use this reality for the sake of coming to one's personal liberation or the end of suffering or the final destruction of the asavas. So in that way, and that dialogue did not stop at the Buddha's death. There continues to be a dialogue, and there continues to be a blending of ideas. In the Western world, you had not just with Islam, but even within the splintering of the different factions of Christianity, you had not just 100 years war. I think you probably had 300 years of intense, brutal war and intolerance, persecution, and real punitive actions of not just countries against countries, but people against people, and a really conflict-loaded approach. And we are lucky, there's when we talk about why to remember history, it can be that one sentence that was memorized and subsequently written down in the founding text of Buddhism could influence the entire culture. When the Buddha said, hatred never ends through hatred, through non-hate alone does it end. And the fact that that one sentence is in the bloodstream of the Buddhist culture then has got a profound influence in supporting the continuation of tolerance that goes down the stream. And we see this, I was born in the United States, so I'm an American, and I learned in school that our founding doctrine is that all people are created equal. I should say all men are created equal with certain inalienable rights. And so, like, there's so much about our culture that's affected because of those few words, those 5 or 6 words that got into the founding document of this country, and it has this big impact Another example is Jesus said that if somebody is kind to, if somebody helps the lowest person, they're helping me. This is Jesus said. So if you help the lowest person, you're helping me.
What you've done unto the least of these, you've done unto me.
What you've done unto the least of these, you've done unto me, said Jesus. And so good Christians typically go to the prison, they go to death row, they go to the skid row, they go to where the people are really low down and lost, and try to help them. And in Buddhism, there was a sort of a very strong idea that giving something to a fully enlightened Arahat is much more effective than giving something to a low-down drunk, not to mention giving something to an animal. And the Buddha did partly try to correct that, because he taught them that giving, he told his stepmother Mahāvaṁsa that a gift to the entire Sangha is more powerful, a gift to the Bhikkhu Bhikkhuni Sangha is more powerful than a gift to any individual, even a Buddha. Is not as great as giving a gift to the dual Sangha. So, but nevertheless, there's that a different kind of an angle, and so it may be that in Buddhist countries, it could be a better kind of a balance if they could even be a little bit less generous to always giving everything so much to the temple, and they could give a little more to the low down, most miserable people in those countries. And here in the West, people give to the low down people, but they despise priests and monastics. They have no respect whatsoever for monastics. So, and it's because of the heritage that comes from a few words in the founding documents. And it's for that reason that if we value what was given by the Buddha in terms of the gradual, especially in terms of the gradual path of training, and understanding this profound, this truth of this way to liberation, which is profound and subtle and difficult to understand. So maintaining fidelity to the founding documents and studying them deeply and trying to understand them as part of preserving that. And of course, we're not the only ones who do that. Other faith traditions also, even other cultures, connect to their founding documents. But it's for this reason that the study of history is beneficial, because it protects us from sort of drifting into something else, drifting into secular Buddhism or psychological Buddhism or something like that, because we don't bother to remember what the original teachings were. Damon.
Wow, thank you, Professor, for the history lesson. It's fascinating. That's the original teachings are very pure and peaceful, but unfortunately, you might agree, we live in not an ideal world, and you have instances where, for example, I believe, I'm not sure if it's true or not, but I've read that the Japanese Buddhist temples, were very supportive of Japanese nationalism and aggression and so forth, unfortunately.
I'm not qualified to comment on that.
That's okay. Maybe Richard knows.
And maybe so. In the few minutes left, I think I'm going to introduce the introduction of Buddhism to Sri Lanka. And then my plan, I approached today being not the least bit worried about getting through the entire story in this session, because I think I can pick up the same story for those who come back at 7 o'clock this evening. And if you don't come back at 7, you can come back later and listen to it on the YouTube to hear the rest of the story. But at least before we go today, I'd like to introduce the Buddhist introduction to Sri Lanka. Now we are coming to following the Third Council. The monks had arranged to send missionaries to the border areas. Mahinda was sent to Lanka, where he converted the king, Neva Devanam Piyatissa, and many others. So the story is picking up here. The people are reverentially preparing the seats for the elders. Having left by the southern gate, the elder Mahinda sat down there, and as one skilled in the Dhamma, he related the simile of the poisonous snake. And that one is the called the simile of the vipers, probably. This particular selection, for some reason, doesn't give the first sutta that Mahinda preached, which was the Mahāvaṁsa Sutta. And we may look at that in our sutta study next week, because it was this sutta that initially inspired the noble Sri Lankan families, the aristocratic Sri Lankan families, to want to take up Buddhism. And it was this sutta that inspired Queen Anula and the aristocratic ladies to want to take up Buddhism. So, but in this case, just for your reference, the simile of the vipers was one, and then the other one is a discourse on the fools and the wise, which was the Majjhima 129. You know how to look up that sutta. So these were two of the suttas that he did. Many women from great families came there, and after worshiping, sat down, filling the garden. The elder taught the discourse on the fools and the wise. 1,000 of those women entered into the first path and fruit. That would be stream entry. So there in the garden, the evening set in. Therefore the elders departed, saying, "We go to the mountain." Seeing them going, the men said, "The elders have left straight away." They went and informed the king. The king went quickly, and after going and worshipping the elder, the lord of the planet, said, "Venerable sir, it is far from here to the mountain in the evening. Live comfortably right here in the joy forest, the joy wood. It is unsuitable being too near the city," he said. Hearing that, he uttered this statement to the elder: The great cloud grove is neither too far nor too near, delightful, endowed with shade and water. Be pleased to reside there. You should turn back, Venerable Sir. And the elder turned back. So the elder accepted the great cloud grove on the banks of the Kadamba River. And the shrine there was called the Turning Shrine because that's where Mahinda turned back from his journey to the mountains. The best of charioteers led the elders to the south of the Joy Wood through the eastern gate to the great cloud grove. And the monastery was given. Then Queen Anula, together with 500 women, came in order to worship the elders, and after listening to the Dhamma, teaching with faithful minds, they entered the second path and fruit. That is, they became once returners. Then Queen Anula had the desire to go forth together with the 500 women, and said this to the Lord of the world, "Today itself we will go forth, if it is your wish, Lord of the earth." Hearing her statement, the king said to the elder, "Venerable Sir, Queen Anula desires to go forth, together with 500 women. Please give them the going forth." "It is not suitable, great king, for us to give the going forth to women. There is in Pataliputta a nun who is my younger sister, Saṅghamittā by name, who is famous and very learned, lord of men. Bring the southern branch of the great Bodhi tree of the Lord of Ascetics, and also the noble nuns to the city in the island of Lanka, king." Meaning, send for them. Then, as the Bodhi tree of the three self-made Buddhas, this is both our Gautama Buddha and the three that were preceding, all sat under different Bodhi trees. Bring the Bodhi trees of the three self-made Buddhas were planted by kings. As the Bodhi tree of the three self-made Buddhas were planted by the kings, so today the Bodhi tree of the famous Gautama, which has a resplendent halo, should be planted, Lord of Earth. Send a message to the king, our father. Let her come. And the elder nun will come and give the going forth to these women. After saying, "Well said," and taking the noble water jug, the king said, "I give this great cloud grove to the community," and sprinkled water over the right hand of the elder Mahinda. As the water fell on the earth with that statement, the earths in excess of 4 myriads for 200 leagues in extent, or 1,000 thick, bearing waters to their edge, shook on all sides. Having seen that wonder, fearful, frightened, and apprehensive, the guardian of the earth asked, "Why does the earth tremble?" "Do not be afraid, great king. The dispensation of the one of 10 powers will be established here, and because of that, this earth trembles. The first monastic dwelling place will be here in this place." Having heard that, the Lord of the world had great faith, offered sweet-smelling jasmine flowers to the elder. And I think I shall pick up this story this evening at 7 o'clock in California time with the arrival of the great Bodhi tree. I thank you all for your patient listening. I have time for final questions. I see Chavi. Is there a question?
Hi, my name is Sevi. Thank you.
Savi, thank you.
Shall we use the same link to log on at 7 p.m.?
No. It's a different link, and I sent an email out that had the link for the evening program.
Oh,
I can put that link in the messages, or you can go to our website and find it. But I'm going to give it to you now.
Thank you.
Okay. Here's the Zoom email. I could have used this same link for the evening program, but I didn't. Okay, there's the link. Just to be sure, if you would like to message me right now with your email, I'll send this to you individually. Okay, great, Savi. I'm pleased to meet you, and we'll look forward to seeing you this evening. Okay, thank you everybody for your faithful practice. Please enjoy having a peaceful, quiet, and meditative afternoon. If you have a time to undertake sitting and walking meditation for the next 3.5, 4 hours, then that will be wonderful.
Sadhu, sadhu.